I'd like to welcome everyone to the Wednesday, March 11th, 2026 budget workshop for the Bangor School Committee. Sorry for the delay. For those trying to watch from home, we had some camera issues, but our resourceful communications director, Ray Finney, is going to be streaming live for us. So thank you. Would everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Looks like we have no adjustments to the agenda, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, so moving on to public comments. Before we do public comments, I do have a statement I need to read. Members of the public may address the school committee for up to 3 minutes on school and education matters. Public comments shall be directed to the school committee and be brief and not repetitive. The school committee's practice is not to respond or debate with speakers during the public comment period. We are here to listen. The superintendent or her staff will follow up on comments outside of the meeting as appropriate. The committee will not permit profanity or shouting and requests that speakers be civil. Discussion of specific personnel or student matters and complaints concerning specific employees or students will not be allowed, but will be addressed through established policies and procedures. Before speaking, we encourage speakers to review School Committee Policy AC, which provides that the committee does not and will not discriminate nor tolerate discrimination against students or employees on the basis of membership in a protected class. Speakers who share comments contrary to this policy will not be allowed to continue. Before starting, please state your name and place of residence. Do we have anyone here for public comment this evening?
You're the only one. Hi, my name is Mike Norton. I was going to tell all of you, Benjamin, Mallory, Shelley, Sarah, Ben, Katie, Tim, Marie, was going to give the world premiere explanation as to why our sky is consistently blue tonight. But because the technical difficulties announcement, I'm not going to do it tonight because I don't believe it's technical difficulties. I think they're just blowing negotiations and the First Amendment right to people's expression. So if there's not a copy of it as normatively, there's no point. So good meeting to you tonight, and have a great week.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments this evening? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to discussion items. We have a budget presentation. Superintendent Robinson.
Just one moment. Smile, everyone.
We'll get started in just a minute. I'll start off actually by just giving kind of an overview and thanking the team that's worked really hard to put this budget together. There literally are thousands of lines in this budget, and it takes a team to put it together and really be thoughtful and mindful about the composition and making sure that we are aligning that to student needs and as well as, making sure that we're being fiscally responsible and everything that goes into that. Thank you. So today we're going to take a look at areas of pride first. As I talked about last month, this really is a story of people. It's a story of students and families. It's not just numbers. The numbers are important. The numbers are impactful. However, we have to remember that it allows us to offer our students and families a world-class education right here in the Bangor School Department. So we're going to review some of the same things that we went over last time, but we do have some additional areas of pride, as you can see here. NASA Tech Rise Challenge at Cohen. Students did an amazing job. swimming champions, we have Down East Peak Night, and we have Fairmount students and SRO recognition, and then many of our extracurricular activities. So just keeping that in mind, there are so many amazing initiatives, amazing programs, and those span from students to families to community. So we're going to get into, and just a run through, I'll go back to the the agenda real quickly. We're going to go through enrollment, we're going to go through the overview of the budget process, we're going to take a look at our financial assumptions and revenue, funding sources, summary of budgetary changes, the student needs summary, the strategic plan alignment, and then we're going to get into the details of the numbers, and that's there in the budget breakdown by cost centers and divisions. And I know we have a little bit of a different setup due to our camera issues today, so if you would like to follow along, you can check the district website under the school committee section, and the copy of this presentation is linked there for those who are following along at home. And then finally, we'll wrap up with conclusions and next steps, and then any questions. And this is not going to be a voting evening. This is just a preliminary workshop, so that discussion is really going to be vital. Director Hale and I have gone through, after reviewing with all of our department heads and leaders and district team leaders, and we've gone through and we've made adjustments that we felt were reasonable and still maintain a sound program. But we are certainly open to ideas, to questions, anything of that sort as we go through the presentation. Just a reminder of our mission and vision. The Bangor School Department provides educational opportunities that inspire students and adults to grow every day, to thrive over time, and to aspire continuously for excellent experience, a personalized and relationships-based, fosters achievement and enhances readiness for college, career, and life after their time in Bangor schools. So looking at our historical enrollment, this was a projection that was created last year. And we've just taking a look at that. We are aware that while we have seen a somewhat of a decline, as I mentioned last time, we are +5 up from last year in our October 1 count. And then if we compare that to the projection, we're actually exceeding the projection by 103 students. So I'm going to be monitoring this projection and possibly redoing it with current numbers to see how that plays out. This goes up to 2035, which is hard to say, but accurate, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask this. Would you prefer us to share thoughts and ask questions as we progress through the presentation, or save them until the end?
I'm happy to answer any questions along the way.
Thank you.
Yes. So here we have our demographic data. We can see the BSD student breakdown by ethnicity, and also our socioeconomic status. We are a little over 50% in terms of those. While all students do get the free lunch, we still have the forms that identify students that would qualify for free and reduced. So we're a little over 50% category. This is following policy DGB, which asks the 3 questions. What is in the best interest of our students? What is financially responsible? And does this budget move us forward with the strategic plan? And I think that's a key question to keep in mind, because we are making some organizational changes that I do believe, and our team believes, is going to help us to move forward and to really build that resiliency as we're seeing the challenges of public schools that we're facing. Our key budget priorities, we want to ensure quality support for all students so they can achieve at high levels. We're going to make sure that we are taking measures to reduce budget lines. We got a little Google-eyed, I'll be honest, scanning through the thousands of lines and seeing what pops out, seeing, can we adjust this? Does it need to be increased? Can it be decreased? Really trying to be mindful. And then ensuring that BSD's organizational structure supports a high-quality work environment for our staff. We know that staff burnout is real, and we're really trying to pay close attention to, how are our staff faring with the additional needs that are coming across, the additional challenges, and the additional numbers of students that come in with needing extra support.
I think Member Cook has a question.
Yes.
I didn't catch you in time, Dr. Robinson, but I'm wondering what our return rate is on free and reduced lunch forms.
We are working on that right now, so I know at least one school has 100% return. We've recently invigorated, I would say, because sometimes what happens is families don't realize that that is an important form, and even though it is not something that will determine a free lunch at this point, it does impact our subsidy and our title funding. So thank you for that question. Any families filling out that, please fill out that form. It's not obvious that you will or will not qualify, so please, for the school district's sake, the department's sake, and really looking at our subsidy, this can help to reduce the local tax burden, the more if we can get all the forms back.
And I'll just say real quick to the...
Yeah, please do it, because I'll just keep going. Great, here's our budget timeline. So we see last month we had our initial presentation, which really shared the narrative of the budget, and today we are reviewing that narrative as well, but also adding the fiscal note that goes with it. So our revenue comes from state subsidy, title funding, and grant funding, and that helps to offset the other portion, which is that local, the local tax dollars that help to fund public education. In terms of state subsidy, we have seen, this goes back quite a ways, this graph, something that has been in many presentations over the years, and is a helpful visual, I think, just to see that the state subsidy has increased. It hasn't, unfortunately, increased at the level that our economic needs have, so that's something that's currently in legislation right now to try to look at that funding formula to see how we can adjust that to better support the needs of education. So the state subsidy that we have received, here are the numbers. And then we have a link to our current ED 279. And then we have Director Hale created an analysis of our ED 279. So those are things that if there are specific questions on that, we're happy to answer. I'm not going to go into those details at this time, though. And then we see our title funding. That has been pretty steady. We did see a little bit of a dip last year, and what we are anticipating is that it will be pretty flatlined. We haven't received the final numbers yet. That should be coming at some point this month. Again, with our grant funding, this is a critical role. Our full-time grant writer, Kathleen Neslusen, does an amazing job working collaboratively with schools and community PTOs to really develop robust grant applications, and we've been very fortunate to be able to increase our grant funds, which directly offsets the local portion that's needed, but also really serves to enhance the student programming that we're able to offer here in the Bangor School Department.
I have a question.
Yes.
I brought this up at a previous workshop, and I'm just curious, have we given any more thought to expanding our grant writing staff? So I'm looking at it's almost $2.1 million that this person has brought in. So clearly they're bringing a lot of value to the system, and I don't know enough about grant writing to know whether or not more is necessarily better, or more people is better or not, but I'm interested if you're having that conversation.
Well, it's something that can be discussed. I think the piece that has to be looked at is each of these grants requires staff to implement it. So while we are, getting funds, there's a grant for this and a grant for that. So then we need people to do that. We need people to oversee it and people to monitor the implementation. So the implementation is in consideration. I have that on the list to discuss with our district team because it does create additional items for people to focus on.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I just wanted to use this section of the agenda to re-amplify conversations we've had around foundation.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are a lot of charitable and philanthropic dollars out there that if we organized in the right way, we might be able to shepherd. And I really could see in a few years having I don't want to overstate, but if we had a $10 to $20 million foundation supporting the Bangor School Department, it could spin off between $500,000 and $1 million a year in charitable support that could further supplement the budget or fund things that are maybe not the first items cut, or things that particular donors or businesses out there might be inclined to support.
Yes, I definitely, two things I want to say about that is, first is I've been in contact with the attorneys and I have the details of what is involved, so I'll be bringing that to one of our April meetings. And I do think it's totally feasible to have that in place before the end of the year, and then we will just need to develop a board and then work on what is the processes of generating some funding or tapping into those potential sources. And then the other piece is just an example of what can happen. This is going back years, but I've experienced a district that had a foundation that was very strong, and when there was a big push to cut the arts and the music programs, the district that had this foundation didn't have to cut anything. So that's a great point. It's really impactful, and more schools around the state, I've learned as I've been digging into this, are embarking on this and are developing these 501c3s. So it's definitely a great way to go. Thank you for bringing that up. So looking at the summary of major factors that are contributing to the budgetary increases, of course, our contractual obligations. One thing that was a positive, still not great, but instead of 20%, we have brought the health insurance rate down to 14. We had preliminary information that helped us to make that decision. It's not solid, but it appeared as though 14% it wouldn't go above that. So there will be further information. Again, that specific number is typically revealed to us in the beginning of April. Then we have our paid family medical leave. We have some discussions with the city in terms of that tax, which is new this year. So there are discussions happening there, and that is an additional piece. And of course, our contractual increases. And I will say the school committee has done a really nice job of, over the years, even before I came, to really negotiate well with the contracts and make sure that the wages in the Bangor School Department are competitive, and I think that's one of the pieces that has led to the retention of so many high-quality educators here in the Bangor School Department. Something else that we've done this year is, well, it was really last year, but impacting this coming year, is looking at those who are paid on policies. So something that our former director of business and I recognized was that while contractual employees' rates were being increased, there wasn't a full review of those that are paid on a policy. So we made sure to adjust those rates to reflect the increases that were deserved and match the cost of living increases. And then when we look at student programming, I mentioned this last time, we are seeing an increase in need. The director or the pupil services department has been serviced by just 2 people and 2 administrative assistants, and that the number of students needing those services has increased drastically since 2017, probably close to 200 additional students. So we are looking to expand that department to be able to better service those students. And then under pupil services department, that whole department is not just special education. It services and oversees nurses, social workers, and multilingual services. So this year alone, we've had over 100 ML students come into the district. So we do need to increase that, as well as social work, special education staff, and educational technicians. And then maintenance and facilities, we have, again, continuing with the projects to ensure safety and enhance the learning environment. I think everyone here is aware we have a capital maintenance plan that has been worked on and has really led to the have right now, just continuous improvement there.
Schools, and I just think it's time for the community to start having a discussion about what that might look like, both for the logistics and the layout and the flow of our grades in schools, but also from a budgetary standpoint. We've all toured the schools and we see how old some of these buildings are, and they're very charming in a certain way. I love Fairmount School, for example. It's a 1919 building, but it feels that way in certain regards, and I like the old brick schoolhouse, but it's an expensive building too from a utility standpoint and just capital needs, and I don't know, I don't want to stick because a lot of things get pushed off to the summer. Discussion about just how expensive these buildings are and what financially it might look like to make some adjustments over the next few years.
Yeah, that's something that we are in the midst of discussing right now. I was in Augusta today with a team of school committee members as well as Member Cook to really take a close look at an opportunity from the Nellie Mae Foundation. So further discussion and information is going to come from that, but essentially there is an application process that we can be awarded potentially up to $500,000 to help facilitate a conversation such as this and develop next steps. So in other words, looking at the overarching, we have buildings that need to be addressed in the Bangor School Department. And then we also may want to consider looking at the east-west divide. And is this an opportunity when we think about the aging facilities to also look at that? And then this application process and potential funding could help to facilitate that process to really ensure that community members are fully engaged in the process and helping us to develop a plan. And some of the data you just talked about, so bringing in like what are the costs, the capital maintenance, the financial impact of those buildings, I think is going to be really helpful as we move forward with that conversation.
Thank you. This is the last thing I'll say on it. I think we should continue to involve the city side of it as well. Just repurpose opportunities for these buildings. They're great neighborhoods, and we have a city council here, and it's worth a shared conversation about what we can do with these spaces if there is some change.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that update on the Nellie Mae opportunities. I'm curious, just given that we're sort of in the process of a strategic plan right now with community members, do you envision any of that content that's been collected being applied to how we view opportunities for other buildings? I know in the few meetings I've been in, east, west, old buildings, combination, more community-centered learning has been a big part. Again, that's just a very minuscule piece of the conversation, is the idea that this Nellie Mae opportunity would provide sort of another strategic plan for building opportunities only, or can we sort of repurpose some of that we've learned thus far in our strategic planning and maybe have some more funds, opened up to be a little bit more strategic in how we actually address these aging buildings with those funds?
Absolutely. One of the outcomes from today's session, and this was just preliminary, so we're still kind of learning the details of the opportunity, but certainly it aligns to what you've said. And what we want to do, we are going to have that preliminary draft analysis of the strategic plan later in, it's actually going to be May. I have that in I forget which meeting, but it's one of the May meetings. So Jennifer Chase will be coming here and presenting those findings, and then giving all of you an opportunity to add input right in the moment through Google Forms, I believe is how she's going to do it, so that we can really have that full input. But I do see the Nellie Mae opportunity as a continuation of what is revealed through the strategic plan. And I did check in with Jennifer last week, and it sounds like there was, like you said, she mentioned it, there was a lot of discussion around facilities, so I think we're gonna hear some preliminary ideas that we can use as a springboard to get us started.
Thank you.
So some of the proposed staffing changes here are, and I didn't have the grade 6 teacher on the other slide, I apologize for that. Assistant Director of Pupil Services, again, special education needs are increasing. The department staff has not increased, so we need to do that. There has been an influx of students at Cohen, particularly grade 6, and we're really trying to make sure that class sizes do not exceed 25. So that extra teacher at Cohen is necessary. And then additional ed tech support to support students to ensure safety and their ability to access education. And then our ML teacher, as I mentioned, we've had an increase in students needing ML services this year. And then the social worker, there aren't full-time social workers at Mary Snow and Cohen. It's one person split between close to 700 or over 600 students. So we're looking to add that piece to help further support students.
Have we been able to fill all ed tech vacancies this school year?
There are, I would say, almost fairly well, no? You just did? I'm seeing, I would say probably half of the buildings still have vacancies based on my informal assessment of head nodding right there. And it always fluctuates. I can tell you, like I sign the papers of either they're coming in or they're going out, and it is kind of a flow. And we are working on that. It's difficult. This is especially for ed techs. It's a tough role. It's a lot of responsibility. So it does have a lot of transition sometimes. Any other questions? And then in terms of looking at where we can reduce the budget, we are looking closely at that. So there is a position at the high school that is, there's a retirement there, and talking closely with Dr. Butler, he's been able to make some schedule changes to allow that not to be filled and not impact student programming. So that's something that we're looking at as well. And again, just looking at our enrollment trends going from 2017 to 2025, a little over 3,700 back then, and now we're a little over 3,400. And then in comparison, we see that students with special needs has increased from a little over 600 to, and that number isn't even, that's from October. So I just checked in on that, and it's a little higher. It's closer. It's closing in on 900 at this point. So definitely seeing an increase there. And then here are the numbers that are reflective of the graphs on the last page. Question?
Yeah, the COVID-19 impact, that's just incredibly striking, that loss of 224 students. Is there anything, has there been anything in the strategic planning discussions, or could there be potentially with the Snelly May funds, can we really dig into, where do those students go? How can we get them back, right? Anything, has that been a part of the strategic plan?
I haven't gotten all of the preliminary results, so I wouldn't be able to answer that really accurately, but what I can say is that I'm assuming, and maybe I would guess, that there's a variety of reasons. Sure. We have tightened up with our homeschool population, and we are at about 160, so we were able to go over that. Last year, I think it was closer to 200, so then there's also people moving in and out of the area. So when people are gone, it's really hard to, find them, I guess, to really know, like, when people leave, where are they going?
Yeah, I would just be so interested to know, of those 224 students, how many of them are still living in Bangor?
It's a great
5
question.
years later.
Yeah. I think one thing we're doing proactively is we've revamped the 8th grade presentations that happen at the sending schools. And that has been really well received, and there's been lots of great feedback. We've also built some mentoring relationships with at least Glenburn, and looking to expand that so that students are connected with the Bangor School Department and can hopefully make a better informed decision as they look to high school.
Thank you.
Just wanted to chime in quickly too with looking at these COVID numbers, especially. I've been fascinated with this, so looking at it from a national perspective, I know this is very much on par with what happened across the country. And from what I can recall from my late night reading, this was pretty much what's happening everywhere. And a lot of kids haven't come back because families figured out a way to make it work. But if we could, in that digging, find out if this is a trend nationwide, I think that'd be helpful context.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with what Member Luciano just said, and just to piggyback on it, we're in this cultural moment, I think, where a lot of families, there's distrust of public institutions, including schools. Maybe some of it in places warranted or values-based, and far be it from me to judge a family for making decisions, but that they deem fit. But I also think much of it is misinformed, and I'm very biased towards the Bangor School Department. I think a lot of the kids that are going alternate routes or homeschooled actually would be better served in the Bangor School Department. And I think that we need to try to meet some of those families where they are by having small group discussions or workshops or a study of some kind with them, or just listening to them about what their concerns are about the Bangor School Department. I think we all know people that are in that boat, and in the conversations I have, I often feel that people are misinformed, that the schools are either much larger than they expect, or that kids are going to be intimidated, or that they're dangerous. And if those are the views out there, if they're inaccurate, we can't just, I'm not saying we do this, but we can't just throw our hands up and say, well, what are we going to do? We have to go and change the narrative so that they understand what their students could get out of a Bangor School Department education. I'd just like us to be more proactive on that. And use our convening status to listen to people, and I think it will inform our thinking a little bit, because I've counted up just in my neighborhood, I think there's 20 or 30 kids that are homeschooled, and when it sounds judgmental about homeschooling, it's the right fit for a lot of people, but not for everyone, and I'd like to see more of those kids in our schools.
And I think our campaign of belonging and really stepping up our media presence, social media and things of that sort has really been helpful. I know we've been monitoring comments and really seeing a shift there. So that is one way, but certainly any of you that know people in the neighborhoods that you are connected with, by all means, keep mentioning the option. And I know Member Speed has spoken at previous meetings about the options for homeschool families, that they can access even a portion of the education here and just test it out and see, and maybe once they're here, they're going to realize that this is a great place. And I guess I'm a little biased too, but I think it is many high quality programs, things that you're not going to find in many other areas around here.
To Member Sprague's point, I'm wondering if we have data on how many of our Bangor kids are attending charter schools.
We do have that information, and I can get the specifics to you.
Because I think it would be interesting to talk to those families as well, because it's really interesting when we look at the data around the certifications of our educators and how they have advanced degrees, and just kind of talking about that. In a lot of charter schools, the educators are not certified, and so really amplifying how high quality the education is here.
I could say more, but I'm going to switch topics quickly about this slide that's up right now. I have a couple of things. The first about the special education with IEPs and 504s, or is that every student that falls under the pupil services?
No, it's IEPs and 504s.
Okay, because I think this is also very demonstrative of why our budget is looking the way that it is, and I just think that we should be amplifying this a bit more, seeing that, you know, in the past 10 years, we've had an increase of 200 students, not including any of the students we're talking constantly about, like, oh, this great increase that we've seen in, you know, families that are multilingual, and, you know, all of the other pieces that fall under the pupil services umbrella. If we're looking at 200 students, over 100 of those being in the past since 2023, I can't imagine that we've seen a huge increase in the number of staff that we have serving these students. I know all the time there's always needs for more staff support. So I think that if we're gonna say, okay, our big proposed budget changes do look at that pupil services umbrella, and we can just say, yeah, since 2023, we've had more than 100 students with 504s and IEPs join, you know, or either joined or be identified, or however those numbers have come to be, are now participating as students in our district, then we have to meet that need. And this is, to me, what we really should be looking at when we're looking at the budget. If we hear, you know, what are the ways that we can cut? What are the ways that we can change? How can we, share resources with other cities? All of these ideas are good, but the numbers are right there, and I just want to say that again and again and again. Thank you.
Yes, it's very critical, and I would say that one of the best, my personal opinion, and I think everyone here would recognize that one of the best investments that a community can make is in their public education system. We know that, you know, looking at our, you know, there's poverty in the area, and, you know, being able to help families who either with special needs or having, you know, being at a disadvantage than maybe some more affluent families, being able to elevate them through education is one of the best ways to keep a community viable. And I know that's statewide. We're looking at the declining population. The school department, as a public school, we have the absolute obligation to service any child who comes through the doors, and that is regardless of need, regardless of anything. And that's I think one of the amazing things about public schools.
Can I just say too, I fully agree, and I just think that while this is super obvious, I just think it bears saying out loud that the more that we invest in our public schools, the more families are willing to say, wow, there are so many great opportunities and resources and experiences and cool things that my student can do at this school that this district doesn't have, or I never had growing up, or this is going to help them achieve their dreams. And we're kind of in this, it's a circle, but it's also sort of like a whirlpool at this point of saying, you know, that we're going to look at these other districts that I personally think are investing a great deal of money into their schools, and then we're losing those students to those districts. I think, again, looking at this budget and looking at what needs to be passed and looking at what needs to be approved on the whole, we have to invest in these buildings and resources and opportunities and making sure that every student has the teacher for them. If we're going to keep families in this district, it's going to be a no-brainer for people to send their kids to Bangor if we're able to reach those needs. We just have to invest in them first. Kind of stuck in that wheel, I think.
Right. Thank you. So when we look at our budget, we always ensure that it aligns with our strategic plan, specifically the core values. The 4 core values of our strategic plan are excellence, learning and teaching, engaged relationships, and safety and well-being. And there's a link there to the current 10-year plan. The update to the strategic plan should be finalized in the summer, but as I mentioned, there'll be a preliminary draft analysis offered at our May meeting. Revenue. What you can see here, the top portion indicates the additional subsidy, the additional local amount that is required. And then we have the local above the required. So it's a little bit confusing. So in order to get the subsidy, we have a required local amount. And then with our budget, there's an additional local amount that we are requesting to be able to service the needs of all students in the school department. So the local amount is a little higher than typical, but again, this is reflective in the student needs. So, and that's one of the things that the state is looking at in terms of that funding formula. Any of the shifts that they make, they're looking at, there's lots of parts to it, but just generally, a big piece of it is looking at valuation as well as economically disadvantaged students. And that hadn't been factored in this new way that they're proposing in the past. So if that happens and they do pass that, we will be higher receivers of subsidy based on our population. So looking down, we see that overarching increase in terms of need for, in terms of the state aid and the local amount is 9.44%. And then we go through our tuition, any of the other areas that are providing revenue for us, and looking at last year to this year, we have maintained that fund balance. The 1.25 million has been consistent, so we've maintained that this year as well to help offset the increase. But we are looking at a $66 million, 337 for our budget this year, which is a little over $4 million increase. And that equates to 6.97% overall. Again, we are monitoring the health insurance, and we will be making adjustments as we can for March 25th.
I'm so sorry, Marie, and I know that you said this. Did you confirm that the 14% is final, or that's the estimate based on?
That's the estimate.
Okay.
So they sent a letter that said something to the effect that 14%. They don't anticipate it exceeding 14%.
Okay.
Because things are looking better than last year, and the cap last year was 14. So.
Okay.
And then ours ended up coming in less than that even.
And that's in April, do you think?
It's typically early April. I know Director Hale is attending a session tomorrow, right? So with Anthem, so we try to pressure them for information. I did try that a lot last year, but they have a process, and that's what they do. So we're kind of at that mercy, and that's true of all school districts waiting for that.
True, thank you. So but this includes the 14%.
It's 14, yeah. So it's down from 20.
Right.
Last time we talked about putting 20% in, and then luckily we did get that information, so we were able to reduce it. And obviously we'll be reducing it based on the additional information.
Wonderful, thank you.
Hopefully, yeah, shouldn't go any higher than this.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So what do we do if revenue falls short? What have we done in the past, and what is the plan? What is plan B?
I don't know that that's happened. That's really an odd thing to have happen for a school department. I haven't experienced that as a superintendent. I think it's important to budget, being very mindful of possibilities. So I haven't experienced that. I'm sure there's a process that would go through with the city if that did happen. And then there's also a process that you can go back to the taxpayers. I just haven't experienced that myself.
Thank you for the presentation.
There's more. Just so you know.
All right, well, this is an important screen, so I'm going to pause here.
It is.
But I want to compliment you on the delivery and the organization and all the hard work that's gone into the budget. I appreciate it. I am the only one that ever really says this, but the amount of the increase is a little higher than I would like to see.
Right.
I think it's easy. We've addressed the needs, so it's a little bit unfair of me to draw out the needs and then also complain about the increase. I fully acknowledge that. But I'm going to say it because I think there's a sense that if you're not in favor of the budget increase, you're not somehow pro-education, or there's people in the community are really struggling. Property taxpayers have a lot of pressures in their own budgets, in their own homes, their own families. The city has a lot of pressures on their side of the budget. So this is an increase that outpaces inflation. I know that a huge portion of it is healthcare costs and special needs costs, and a little bit lesser factor the multilingual increase. But I would like to see, and I don't necessarily think you need to get into it right now because regrettably it may be personnel related, if there was further cuts, what would that look like? I don't want to put you on the spot to have to talk about that in front, and it's just not the right venue.
Oh, I can speak to it. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'd like to hear like what would be the next round of cuts be, so we can have a sense of how much that would hurt, and we could balance the needs. I would hope that it sometimes seems to happen that the state subsidy is a little higher, or the insurance is a little bit lower than we think, and maybe this 6.9 and 7% becomes like 5.7% or something like that. I hope that's the trajectory over the course of the spring, but even still, I think it's still a little bit high. So I just want to say that. I appreciate you listening.
Yes.
I know no one else is going to say it, but people usually thank me in the hallway for being the one to say it. So I'm bolstered by that.
I think it's fair.
Before you jump in, every meeting that you say that, I always say it on record. So when you say that, it almost makes me feel like nobody's listening to me, because I usually jump on after you and say, I agree, because I know people are struggling, increasing tax. I mean, that's tough for people. I think everybody obviously is on the school committee because we love Bangor School Department. Like, we think it's the foundation of the larger community. But at the same time, the people who have to pay for that, they're things are tough. Inflation's high. Like, this makes a difference in their lives by increasing. Like, every little increase affects their ability to get healthcare or to do whatever. So I think we're all mindful of that, and I like to say it too. But I also understand how difficult it is, and you don't want to go into other cuts that might be necessary. We've been, or at least when I've been on the school committee, we've been lucky, because usually there is something like, oh, this price is actually much lower than we thought, or oh, blah blah blah. So like didn't have to make those hard decisions, but there might come a time when we do have to make those decisions, and I think I speak for more than just you that I think we're willing to engage in those tough decisions if they're necessary.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
But we can certainly engage in those conversations. I mean, the majority of the budget is salaries and benefits, it's personnel. So some of the things that you're looking at, I mean, like I said, Director Hale and I went through pretty much line by line, scanning and even looking very closely at things like, do you need furniture this year? If not, take it out. And being really mindful of that, looking at utility costs. Do we need a 20% increase? Can we go with a 15% increase? So we've done all of those small things. We're going to review that again. But the next step would really be personnel. So what we would need to take a close look at is, what we're anticipating, what do we want for class size? So as soon as you start reducing staff, you're going to look at classroom teachers, you're going to look at support staff potentially. There are a lot of legalities around the support staff, so that's a little bit tighter to be able, you can't just, not have something that's legally required, of course. But yes, I think that, I've had the conversation, and the building administrators are really being mindful of that. I feel like right now we're looking at around 20 is like a fair class size. Like I said, with Cohen 6th grade getting up to, eking up to 25, and not even with any new students. And that was the issue last summer. We had an influx of students that really pushed the envelope. So, that would be the next step. I've definitely been in that. I've done the riffing process in my previous district. It's not fun, it's not pleasant. I know districts around the state have, just districts I've looked at, even last year, cut some significant numbers of positions. So, if it does come to that, there is a process for it. It would be difficult, but, and it of course would impact, it impacts the programming. So, a class size, if we cap everything at 25, 30, we're looking at a very different educational experience than a class of, 20 to 21.
I just wanted to mention that you'll probably be seeing in the media soon that there are a lot of districts that are making profound cuts to their staff in their proposed budgets, and the most recent MEPRI behavior report really indicates like crisis level behaviors and amplified behaviors happening in classrooms, and I'm really nervous about what this is going to mean for those districts. And when I see our proposed budget that's looking at adding positions to expand our offerings and support our students, I'm really proud of that, and I feel grateful that that's what we're in a position to do, instead of removing things so that we can enhance the experience for Bangor students.
Yeah, I personally, I think that when we additionally cut education, we reflect that it's not that important, and then it perpetuates the mass exodus that has already happened over COVID, because we're saying, well, we're cutting, so therefore these programs aren't here, and then people start to look elsewhere.
Yeah, just briefly, I just want to add, I would be very disappointed if we had to engage in some sort of reduction in force, particularly of classroom teachers, and keeping in mind that student-to-teacher ratio. And there's just stacks and stacks and stacks of research that show that when that student-teacher ratio starts to creep up much past 20, and especially above 25, it really negatively impacts
work and the entire team, everyone here, members. And I'm going to ask you a really simple question that probably has a laughable answer, but I think that we all agree that as people who live in Bangor, we also don't want our taxes to increase, right? And we have so many friends and family who talk about it to us all the time. And I think that we have, to be perfectly blunt, a hard job of meeting the city and saying, please believe us, this is the most important thing. This is telling the story. People tell the story. We see the value in our people. We know that's where the value lies. The silly question is, if we look through these proposed numbers and we're looking at transportation or admin, I already know, what process or how might we even be able to help you identify ways that we could get a little bit more creative in some of those areas that don't address reduction in force, if we need to bring those numbers down?
Well, that is something that we are going to look at again, as I mentioned, each individual line, whether it's utilities, transportation, that contract is up this year.
After this coming year. Yeah.
This coming year, the contract is up. So that's another thing that's in discussions right now across the region, is we're looking at, districts have come together to take a close look at our SEER bus contracts and, see what possibilities there are there. But I can also say that that's a tough spot too. I mean, it's really difficult to fund or to fill those positions rather. And I know the SEER has a hard time keeping drivers.
Mm-hmm. I know there's complications in every single line. I just can't help but think that there's districts out there in the United States somewhere who have said, oh, if we work with a nearby district to do this, or if we, are creative in this way for our facilities or admin or transpo, whatever that looks like, I'd be curious to see maybe how we might just have to get creative so that we're not addressing any of the personnel.
Yes. One thing that does come to mind as you're talking about this is the Education Service Center, the Presque regional group.
Yeah.
So discussions are there, and there are places that do share staff. The issue is that we have enough students where we're not really the ones that need to share. So that's how it's played out at this point. There are discussions though, like I said, with the Presque region, are we going to regionalize services? One thing that has come up is the CDS, which at this point is state funded, and they're saying it's going to be continually funded, so I don't anticipate a budgetary increase with that, but that we are looking at regionally. But yeah, in terms of regionalizing, I think better to look at, and this is not for this year, but for future, is like Member Sprague said, with the education foundation that's being formed. And then again, with our community partnerships, being able to branch out into the community and have things available to students that might have a lower fiscal note is the way to go.
Absolutely. And I want to say that there are absolutely opportunities to create other funding revenue streams for our schools, and I'm excited that we're examining that. And saying that you need to be creative in your work, I did not mean to imply that you and directorial were already working incredibly thoughtfully on this. So thank you truly for all of your work.
Absolutely, no. It's not taking anything personal.
I want to address the inflationary piece, and I understand that year to year inflation wasn't 7%. However, inflation and inflationary pressures cast a long shadow, and not that 3 or 4 years ago we had 9-10% inflation year to year. And an example of that long shadow is I know just a year or two ago, I think it was a year or two ago, we gave a substantial increase to the wages for our educational technicians. And the reason we did so is because many of them were making less per hour than you could make at
McDonald's.
Dunkin' Donuts or McDonald's, and nothing against working in those places. There's dignity in all work, but we were having a hard time recruiting educational technicians and for those reasons. So,
And just to piggyback off of that, as the state is passing legislation to ensure reasonable wages, Bangor is pretty in line with that already. So that's a testament to the work you've already done. So now we can get into the specific categories. And again, if there are any questions, I don't know if you want to, Director Hale, go over the details of the budget categories. So these are the cost centers that are broken down according to the state requirements. And then we have, oops, click on that.
You want to do it from here?
You can do it from there. Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. I'm excited to be a part of this process, and I appreciate all of the administrators. Everybody's been amazing. And the business office has been exceptionally helpful in this process. There's a lot that goes into the data entry and everything like that. So I wanted to give them a little shout out as well. So I'm actually going to look back at the revenue side of things, just so I can kind of highlight the changes there. So we reduced the tuition for regular and special ed, and some of these changes you'll see are just a reflection of what is and what the changes have been over maybe this current year and previous years, and trying to make it the budgeted numbers reflect what the actuals are. So tuition has gone down slightly, so we adjusted that a little bit. The subsidy, as you all know, it went up $2.6 million, so that's really good. Some districts do not get that good news in having their subsidy go up, which also the state share had increased and lowered the local share, so that was another positive. And as you saw in that previous slide, it lowered the local required to actually a little over $100,000. So that was a good change for you in the ED 279. And as Marie mentioned before, there is a slide that outlines the different changes in the ED 279. So the changes from last year to this year. So that can kind of explain why you're seeing some of those increases or decreases. Regional programs, that was another reduction, just based on what the actual is coming in. Investment income, that was, if you see the monthly financials, that one was one that was under budgeted, but that had been an account that we acquired just recently over the past year, so I think the budgeted amount was not reflecting what it actually could be. So you'll see it in a lot of these areas, both on the revenue and expense side, that we're just trying to make sure things are aligning to what they're actually reflecting. So that was a significant increase, so that's helpful. And then switching over to the expenses, the payroll.
Sorry to interrupt. Do you know what the increase was
for the
interest earned from banking?
So I believe the budgeted last year was 13,000, and I think we're going up to 200. Actually, it was 79.5 and increasing it to 300,000. So it was quite the increase. Yeah. So then on the expense side of things, I'm, at the sake of not repeating myself over and over again, all of the different cost centers you will see will, the payroll, the wages and benefits are all contractual obligations. So those are, collective bargaining agreements, things like that. Those are things that we are obligated to increase. And as Dr. Robinson mentioned, the payroll is 80 to 90% of the total budget. So those impacts have quite a lot there. The medical leave tax, the new tax that everybody is well aware of, that is also another increase in there. So that is half the employer cost, and we're also following some details on that, and that may be something that we're looking at over the next between the two budget presentations. That number may be adjusted a little bit. The health insurance rates, we've talked about that a little bit. There's that 14%. I'm hoping to get some more information tomorrow, so I'm not hopeful about it, but we'll see what they can give. But and then staffing changes. Overall, there was a net addition of 11 full-time equivalent positions. So that is, for a further explanation of that, as Dr. Robinson mentioned, there were some retirees. There may have been certain positions that were, half part-time positions or full positions. So then we may have added a half position. So netting the ones that didn't return and the ones that were added, it's a total of the 11 full-time equivalent positions, just so you're aware of what that looked like overall. And then if you go down to the regular instruction side, that 11 full-time equivalent is actually, so the impact total for those positions is $419,000 for those that were added in.
I don't know if you want to talk through all of that.
No, I'm just going to touch on those just a little bit, because I'm not going to repeat the contracted agreements and things like that. But so some other significant changes, you'll see the system admin negotiations come up this year. So that's something that we needed to put in there that wasn't in there last year. So that was a significant increase. And then there is throughout the whole.
I think for other instruction, we were going to talk about that a little bit.
So the other instruction, that's the stipends. Did you want to touch on that one?
Yeah, what we identified is that some of the stipends that are in the contract hadn't been filled for a number of years, and that had been taken out of the budget. But knowing that that possibility is there, and it's contractually obligated, we put that back. So that's why you'll see a significant increase in the other instruction. Is to make sure that those funds are there when teachers and other community members are able to, take on those stipended positions.
And the last thing I wanted to really touch on was for the all other expenditures, that does include food service, and food service is it serves itself as far as the revenues and expenditures go, but typically the department will contribute funds to the food service, and last year it was $50,000, but the food service actually has quite the fund balance, so we were able to pull that back, and we do not have to contribute any funds to that this year. So that is actually really, really positive, and we've been able to do quite a bit within the food service of upgrading some of the facility things in the cafeterias at some of the schools. So
cafeteria tables.
Yeah, some good things going on there with that. But if anybody has any questions about anything specific.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So each of these next slides, whoops, going the wrong way. The budget cost centers, this is our graph. Looking at regular instruction takes up, a little over 40%, and then you can see the breakdown of the other cost centers in a visual format. And here you can see each of the cost centers broken down, and then on the right-hand side, what's included in that cost center. I know it can be confusing because there's different components to each of the cost centers. So I'm not going to read through all of these. Please stop me if you have any particular questions on any of the cost centers. regular instruction, special.
Is there
I'm going to defer to Heather for the specifics on that.
We
I think it was a shift, but
we mentioned before, some of these things are maybe because they were put into another cost center or in another category, they actually belonged in one of these, so that may be why you see a significant increase, but yeah. Yeah, you're like, oh, what do we need to buy? No, so the tables that we talked about, you actually won't even see that in any of these expenditures because it's gonna be fully funded through the food service, which is not part of the general fund budget.
yeah, so this is confusing when you get into the details because as you see, like, you know, it's a significant percentage increase, but obviously that's not reflected in the final, and that's because they're shifting. So, you know, if you move something from one cost center to better align it into another cost center, it appears as though it's a significant increase, and really it's a shift.
Thank you. I think it's just important to see that out loud.
Yes.
You're exactly right. You're seeing a decrease in other areas, so thank you for that.
Student and support staff. System administration. School administration.
So is the increase in salaries on this, this is not, again, not staff, but the
Contractual obligations. Let's see. This is our transportation contract. As I mentioned, that's a standard 4% increase in the contract, and that will be something that we take a close look at coming up after it expires this year. Facilities and maintenance. Our debt service. The other expenditures and school lunch. And then this breaks down everything by division. So the cost centers are what the state requires, and the divisions are what we do within the school department. That breaks everything down in Bangor. So if there aren't any further questions, I want to thank all of you for your very thoughtful questions and comments. It's really great to have all of you engage with the process. It's really important. We are going to be reviewing everything again and make any revisions as needed for March 25th. And that will be the time when we will look to vote on that. We do have a piece in the charter that says we do have to deliver our school budget to the city. I think it's the first Monday before
April.
the first.
So it's around
It's
that
the second Monday.
April meeting that we have scheduled.
Yes.
However, we're hoping to get those anthem rates locked in
Right.
there.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why we moved it back too. So it doesn't have to be finalized at the end of March. We do have that initial week in April. So that's why we shifted it. Any further questions?
I just wanted to reiterate again, the quality of the budget presentation and the hard work that's clearly evident that went into this budget. I'm grateful to be in a city that isn't doing drastic budget cuts, that's really focusing on the importance of education and putting their money where their mouth is, essentially, to hopefully not only to raise the future, but to let other communities know that Bangor is really here for the students and that you're welcome here as well. So I just want to say thank you to the staff and everyone who input here today. You can really see it.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm just going to jump on that one as well, but also I always feel like it's important to remember how many of our employees and educators live in the city and want to invest in their own community again, and I appreciate that they're both giving their time and money, and they get more of that back, but it's still just, I think, an important reminder that, we are residents to pay into their own paychecks in some cases. And I appreciate that that's a challenging spot to be in. And again, this budget has been the most pleasant budget we've had. I will say that as consumable data, and thank you for that. It's been actually pleasant to go through. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I wanted to thank folks as well. Thank you, Dr. Robinson and Director Hale for this wonderful presentation. And I know that we're looking at about a 6% increase in this. I too talked to folks this fall when knocking on doors, and there were some families that did express, as folks who are on fixed incomes and their concern for budget costs. And so I think this presentation, does a good job in talking about the return on investment and that Bangor citizens will see from investing in education. And I think that's the job that we have to do, really, is to ensure the folks of Bangor that we are mindful of that. We're mindful of the budget costs. We're mindful of costs of living increases, but the investment that we put into education as being the most important investment that a community can make. And I would like to, look at some numbers as far as what other similar school districts are putting together or are expending for their education. I looked into some of the numbers, and I think it would be valuable to also recognize the percentage of investment of those communities of their overall city budget into education. I believe Bangor invests a smaller amount than a lot of the communities of similar size. And I also want to recognize the where the budget sits right now, because I imagine there's been a lot of hard work that has gone into what got it to the place where it is right now.
Yeah, it was several percentage points higher before we started.
I can imagine you've
Let's
already...
take a close look at this.
Yeah, I can imagine you've already had those tough conversations, and probably the budget came in when folks were looking at what do we need to go back and point back to those important questions about what's in the best interest of our students, what is financially responsible, and does it move us forward with a strategic plan. So I'd like to actually go the opposite direction that Member Sprague went, which is to increase that budget to meet those original projections. And I wonder if you could talk about some of those hard decisions that you've already made. If we were to have more money to put into the budget, what would that go towards?
Well, I think I would have to go back to the team to get the specifics. All of that is not fresh in my mind. But I would say that going through line by line and finding things such as the interest on an account that hadn't been accounted for. So really, doing a deep dive and digging in. Fortunately, I would say one thing that I can tell you that isn't in the budget that was discussed was an increase of instructional coaching. And that's something that we have increased slightly, but I wasn't able to increase as much. So that's one thing. We do share some of those instructional coaches, and I know schools would love to have a full-time person, but that would be a significant increase. So we're making an impact and doing a great job with what we have. So again, it's really trying to be mindful of the taxpayer and saying, this, and recognizing that this is a significant increase, and then, looking at how we can build this foundation that we're talking about prior to maybe adding these additional pieces, knowing that we can then offset. Because I think, there are those community members on that fixed income, and we have to be mindful of them. So, I think we are taking measures to future-wise to offset budgetary increases, but I do think that it is important, and I appreciate that you're bringing this topic up because public schools, if we continue to cut, it's just gonna lead to, poor outcomes for students, for children and families. And Education, like I said, is one of the, as you said, one of the best things that a community can invest in.
Yeah, and I also wonder, we've had a couple of discussions on the buildings. We've talked about needs of multilingual students, of pupil services, those increases in need that is there. And I would think you're being very judicious of adding one multilingual instructor. You know,
It's a split, right?
It's a
We're gonna split
district-wide.
yes.
I prefer to see more. I prefer to see more funds go towards pupil services. And so, are there other costs that we're leaving on the table when it comes to buildings, when it comes to, like, I would just want to just say that if we're thinking about these old buildings, what are we not repairing? What are we kicking down the road? And I would challenge the city to consider, before any other bond issue were to come up to the city, consider that. Consider the buildings of the schools and how, as Member Sprague said, how can we look at the buildings and their future use?
And I would say, speaking of facilities, we are certainly maintaining Mary Snow and Fairmount, but not looking to, do any large-scale projects. Some of the ways that we're balancing the facilities needs is, things like the front of a building is getting windows this year. The back of the building will get the windows next year. So things of that sort, being really strategic. Changing out sections of carpet, I smile because this has been a topic. Sections of carpets in the schools, as opposed to doing the entire school all at once. That's not that, that's manageable. It's not ideal, but these are the concessions, I would say, that the building administrators are making, knowing that it's not having a tremendous educational impact, but certainly overall will enhance the learning environment. If you haven't been to the buildings with the new floors, they're great. They're really, really great. And they also cut down on the cleaning costs. So we look at that. You think about technology, well, there's technology in floors. Who would have known? I just learned this. But cleaning and maintaining them is a lot less expensive. So we're investing in these things with again, thinking of that return on investment.
And I just want to really quickly to answer your question, because I also love to look at school districts that are comparable sizes and needs. The average across the state right now is 5 to 10%. I think we've all seen this trend. We all know this. But I was especially looking at RSU 21, which is in southern Maine, Kennebunk. They also have a budget of $62.6 million, around the same amount of students that we have, and theirs is an increase of 5.6. So we're almost there. I feel like this is exactly where I expected to see it, just given the trends that we've seen and how other cities are moving, the ones that aren't making massive personnel cuts. So I appreciate all of the work that's gone into this. And again, yes, how digestible it all is this evening. Thank you very much.
Of course. Any other questions?
I'll just wrap things up. I want to jump on the thank you train here, and particularly Member Luciano's comment about feeling really well prepared during this budget season, and that's really a testimony to you, Superintendent Robinson, and to your team. I think you've done an amazing job communicating this to us and to the public. I support the budget as it's presented. I think it strikes the right balance. I think you mentioned that already, that balance of thinking about the taxpayers and cost of living, but also delivering on what the Bangor School Department is known for, which is excellence in many ways. All right, moving along to information items. We have a meeting on Wednesday, March 25th, 2026, a regular meeting, 7 p.m. in the council chambers. Wednesday, April 8th, 2026, regular meeting at 7 p.m. in the council chambers. Wednesday, April 29, 2026, regular meeting, 7 p.m. in the council chambers. And Wednesday, May 13th, 2026, regular meeting, 7 p.m. again here in the council chambers. Can I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? We are adjourned.